This is Gemara Zevachim, Daf Yud Zayin, the Daf for Erev Yom Kippur, an incredible day. We're going to try to get out some Daf early so we can plan appropriately. All the learning should be an incredible schos, Refuah Shalema, for Gabriel Simcha, Ben Miri Mahuva, V'siyata D'Shemaya, the incredible Koyach HaTorah, especially on these most auspicious days, should bring Gabriel Simcha, Ben Miri Mahuva, a continued refuah shalema. So we're holding on the top, 2 lines on the top, as we go into the next paslos in our Mishnah, which is a Tful Yoim. And again, we remind ourselves that all the dinim in our Mishnah are not just pasol for the din that the Mishnah spoke about, which is the Zrika, which is, the Kabbalah. No, I said that wrong once again. Which is, yes, the Kabbalah, but they're also negeya for the halacha and the zrika as well. They're not negeya to the shchita, as we know, shchita is kshira bizar. Says the Gemara Tvol Yom. One, this is a level of tumah that we're going to talk about. Says the Gemara Minalan. Where do we know that if someone is Tvol Yom, it's going to passel up the avodah ditan? Your Rav Simai Omer teaches Rav Simai remez that's Tvol Yom shemavad chilel minayin. Says Rav Simai, where do we find a remez, a illusion in the Torah, that if a Tvul Yom does the Avodah, it's going to be Chilel, it's going to invalidate the Avodah. Tamalemer Kadeshim Yu. Says the Torah, you should be holy. And you should not profane it. If we don't need this pasuk for a straight up case of someone who is Tameh, why not? As we've already seen, nothing maybe in Nazruz, we already know someone who's Tameh is pasal avodah today. So place it for someone who is a tful yoim. Then, as much as there is some level of tahira, because it's not complete tahira, therefore we'll still pasal up the avodah. And of course, this will apply until Harav Shemesh, as this person already went to the mikvah. He's just waiting for the complete process to run its course. And with Harav Shemesh, with the setting of the sun, then he will be completely tahar. Says the Gemara, Imam Tinehu Inyan Lekairach Karcha Lemashches Peyas Zakein. Says the Gemara, but maybe this pasuk is needed for something else. Maybe the pasuk is needed as the psukim right before this pasuk of Kadeshim Yu. It's talking about someone who makes a bald spot, someone who destroys the payah, someone who destroys a corner of his payis. So maybe the pasuk is talking about that it's a continuation of that iser that the Torah is teaching us, that if someone did such, someone was karcha, someone who was mashchis peyah zakein, that what? He will pass up the avodah. But it's not there to teach us a din by Tvil Yom. As Rashi spells out, like we just said, Diminayu Salik. So Torah was just talking about this topic. So rather, says the Gemara, no. Tvil Yom demavad b'misa minolan. So says the Gemara, I'll tell you why the pasuk has to be referred to a Tvil Yom. And the reason is, a Tvil Yom that does the avodah while being tamei is chayim misa. How do I know that? We learn it out from the Gamar Chilul Mitruma. We learn it out from Gzeir Shava of Chilul from Truma. So what does Gzeir Shava teach us? The Gzeir Shava teaches that our pasuk of V'lo Yechalalu links our din of Tful Yom to a din of Truma, that both of them are going to be Chayim Misa. So what do we see? We see that the pasuk b'Truma Machal Avaida, the Lapasal B'Truma Le Machal Avaida. So we see that the only time there's going to be a chilul in the Avaida is someone who is connected to Truma, someone who is learned out within this Gzeir Shav of chilul from Truma, which is only someone who's puzzled by Truma will be puzzled over here. Now, if you're suggesting me that the Torah is referring to the previous topic, which is making a bald spot, which is removing the payas, those are not areas that are pasul truma. Therefore, it can't be. That's what the Torah is talking about. That it's pasul avaida, and therefore, rather the Torah must have an extra pasuk, kadesh miyu v'leichalu, which are learning to darshan our din by tvul yoim. Says the Gemara. Amar Rabba. Smack in the middle of the Amid. First line is Amar. Lama li de kazr achmana tamei utvul yoim umachosar kippurim. Why do we need 3 different mekayrais for 3 different levels of tama? Someone who's tamei, someone who went to the mikvah is waiting harav shemesh at tvul yoim, and someone who is machosar kippurim didn't bring the carbon yet. Why can we learn one from the next? Says the Gemara, I'll tell you why. Because Rachmana Tameh, I would have thought she came in Tameh. Someone who is Tameh has the ability to make someone else Tameh. Whereas, she came in Tameh. B'Tvul Yaim. And if the Torah just wrote about Tvul Yaim, I would have thought Mechus Kippurim Lo Asimine. Why not? Because Shkein Basal B'Tshuma. Because Mechus Kippurim is Basal B'Tshuma. So that's why that wouldn't have worked. B'Mechus Kippurim, let's say the Torah just didn't write Mechusar. Let's say the Torah only wrote Mechus Kippurim. Then I would have said what? Tvul Yaim Lo Asimine. You can't learn a Tvul Yaim from it. Why not? Shkein Mechusar Ma'isa. A Tvul Yaim is lacking a Ma'isa. Well, Ma'isa, not Tvul Yaim. The Mechusar Kippurim is lacking a Ma'isa the carbon. So therefore, maybe you can learn out a Tvul Yaim from it. So that is the reason, says the Gemara, all 3 are necessary, and you can't learn one from the others. So says the Gemara in classical Gemara sequence, Mechada Liasi, okay, but Teisi Chada Mitarti. So write 2 and learn out 1 from 2. Says the Gemara, Behela Lech Rachmana. So what are you suggesting? 5 lines from the bottom. Which one should the Torah not have written? It should not have written about Mechusar Kippurim v'tisi mehanach. Learn out from Tamei and Tvul Yaim. What's the problem? Malahanach shkein pesulim b'tshuma. Tamei and Tvul Yaim are pasul with tshuma. Ella. Okay, so you can't learn out from there. Don't write by Tvul Yaim v'tisi mehanach and learn out from Mechusar Kippurim and Tamei. What's the problem? Demai parches. What are you going to ask? You're going to tell me that a Mechusar Kippurim and a Tamei still needs to do an action. Says the Gemara, even if that is true, soiv klishla tamasan. But still, what do we see? The Tama is weaker than the Tvul Yaim. So maybe we should be able to learn how to Tvul Yaim from a Mechusar Kippurim, and so on that is Tamei. As we turn over to Yitzayinim and Beis, response the Gemara that it's not true. You're telling me that it should be a weaker form of Tama, and that's what you should be able to learn it out. Says the Gemara, not so fast. Kasava Rabba holds Mechusar Kippurim dizav kisav dami. A Mechusar Kippurim, someone who didn't bring the carbon, if it's considered by Tomas Zav as the din of a full-fledged Zav, and Rashi spells out, and same thing by a Misaira. And therefore, you will not be able to learn out 1 from 2. As Rashi says, there's really no weakness in the Toma. So says the Gemara, Umechosar Kippurim dizav. So that's really the teretz, and that's why you can learn out Chada Meitarti, 1 from 2. Says the Gemara, and the din that you just said, Umechosar Kippurim dizav, Umechosar Kippurim dizav kizav dami. This Yisai that you're suggesting, that a Zav that didn't bring a carbon yet has the status of a full-fledged Zav, and therefore, like Kol Shatoma, there's no weakness. Says Gemara, this is a Machlekes Tanoihi, the Tanya, Sreif Einin, Umechosar Kippurim. And these 3 cases, if an Einin or a Mechosar Kippurim was Sarfa, burn the para, do malachis ksheira. Yosef Abavli Aimer Einin ksheira, but Mechosar Kippurim is psula. So what's this machlekes? Why is Yosef Abavli matering by an einin, whereas the Tanakama says not. Says the Gemara, you know what the machlekes l'chayra is? My lava kamifligi. This is the machlekes. Mar savar Yisrael Bavli old b'chosek Kippurim dezav kizav dami. B'chosek Kippurim has a full-fledged status of a zav, and that's the reason why he'll pass up the carbon. Umar savar Tanakam holds low. No, lav kizav dami. Tanakam holds it doesn't have din of a full-fledged zav, and therefore it has a diminished form of tuma, and that's the reason why, according to the Tanakama, if a Mechosek Kippurim burns the paraduma, it's indeed going to be Kishera. Says the Gemara, no, this is not the Machlekes Tanai. The Kuli Alma Kizav Dami, everyone knows Mechosek Kippurim, like we suggested on the top line, has the same status of a Zav. 10 lines down, what's the Machlekes? Says the Torah, the Torah should sprinkle Mechlal from there and infers Shu Tamei. This infers that someone already started the Tahira process, but currently is Tamei. Limit al Tvul Yaim. This is teaching us about a Tvul Yaim. Went to the mikvah, but still doesn't have full Tahira. Shekasher be para. That's going to be kosher by a para aduma. So says the Gemara, Somar Savatanakam holds Tamad the Cholatar Kula. Omar Savatamad Dach Parsha. So the Tanakama holds that when we say that Tvul Yom is kosher for the paraduma, Tvul Yom is Tumah D'Cholatar Kula. Any mention of Tumah the Torah, even a Zav, Umar Savar, but Yisrael Bavli is going to hold Tumah D'Ach Parsha. No, only in the Tumah of this Parsha. Hilkach, therefore, Oinin, Utvul Yom, the Tamei Sharetz, the Kili, these three, which are not as chomer as Tvul Yaim, asu bekal v'chaymer mitvul Yaim, are you able to learn out of a kal v'chaymer from Tvul Yaim? The mace of a mace. Ava Mechosek Kippurim dezav, the chomer shchein toma yetze alav migufai, because the toma comes from the body itself. Therefore, Lai will not be able to learn out from a Tvul Yaim. This is a new yisai the Gemara is introducing over here, that when the toma is yetze migufai, it has an element of chumrah to it. And this really sheds a little bit of light on that top Rashi that taught us that it's not just din of a zav, it's same din of a mitzayra. And the reason being, because this yisoid, this chumrah that we're talking about, is dafka by Thomas HaYotze Megufai, whether it's the ziva flow of a zav, or whether it is the tsaras of the affliction which comes on the body itself. So because these are both forms of tumah that come on from the body and are not external factors like sheretz or like meis mitzvah, therefore they can have a higher level of chumrah. And therefore, according to Yosef Abavli, that says that this din by Tvul Yaim is going to be when you touch a mace, is going to say this is not necessarily going to be the same by Toma Yotze Megufai, by Zavane Mitzayra. Why? Because there is this element of chumrah. Says the Gemara, Mechosek Kippurim, and the Mishnah, the next case, the Mishnah is a Chosek Kippurim that does the Avaida, Mechosek Begadim, not wearing all the Begadim, whether it's the Dalit of a Kohen Hadyet, whether it's the Shemaina of a Kohen Gadol, that will pass up the Avaida. Minala, and it says the Gemara, Maravu Amar Rav Yechanan, Umataba Mishveder Rav Elazar, Rav Shimon, Damar Kra, says the Torah of Chigarta Isam, Avneit, Aaron Ubanov. Says the pasuk that they have to wear the avnei Aaron his children chavash lemikbaois, and they're going to wear hats. Vaisalahem kuhuna, it'll be for them for a kuhuna lechuk asayla. And from here we dash bisman shebig deim aleim kunasam aleim, but aim big deim aleim. If they're not wearing their clothing, then ain kunasa aleim. They're not considered the kuna upon them, meaning they can't do the avodah. And therefore, if a kain is not wearing his appropriate begadim, he does not have the status of Okayin, and therefore the Vaida is going to be possible. Ask the Gemara, Vamiyacha Nafka, Me'asam Nafka. Says the Gemara, but we have a different Makar. The Tani, Minayin Lishtu Yayin. How do we know someone drink wine? Shema Avad, if he performs Avoida Chilel, Tamalemi Yayin V'Shechar Al Teish, V'Goymer, will have the Minakash Binachol. And therefore, what do we see from here? We see that it's only going to be kosher if you're not Shasu Yayin. And therefore, whereas if one is shikar, it will be possible. Continues the brisa. See, continues the brisa. How do we know the next two cases of our Mishnah? We turn over to tomorrow's daf Yochesam and Alf. You know, we learned it out from Chuka L'Gzeira Shava. Says the Gemara, a different makar that we just said. Learn out from Gzeira Shava, Mechusar Begadim, and one who didn't wash their hands and feet, that's going to be possible. So says the Gemara, for learning out from Gzeira Shava, why are you telling me? The Gemara just suggested that we learn it out from, the Gemara just suggested Rav Avuam, Rav Yechanan, Rav Elazar, Rav Shimon, V'chagarta Isam Avneit, that we learn from the pasuk. Says the Gemara, Imei Hasam, if it was only that makar, the Gzeira Shava V'amina, Ani Mili Avoida Dezar, Chayev Ala Misa, Aval Avoida Dein Zar, Chayev Ala Misa Eimalai. But Avoida, that's not of a Zar. I would have thought that you're not going to be Chayev Misa, even if you're not wearing the appropriate clothing. Kamash Malan, so that's the chiddush of the pasuk that we're quoting. That the Torah is teaching us that it's going to have the regular full status of kahuna, meaning that if you're not dressed appropriately, you're going to be losing that status. That will passel up the carbon, whether the kain himself or the non-kain will be chayiv misa, but it'll passel up the avodah. Stop over here, I'll pick it up from here. B'siyata dishmaya.